Hi, Mitchell Levy, global credibility expert. And it is exciting to be here and be at this time of the week where I get to do one of the funnest things I get to do. And that is talk to a leader about their values. Today, we have Kyle McDowell. And Kyle, great to have you here.
Hey, Mitchell, it's wonderful to see you again. And thank you for having me.
Oh, it's great to have the interaction together. And so, for everyone to get to know who you are, who is Kyle McDowell?
Well, I mean, on the surface, the kind of more surface level responses. I'm an author. I'm a public speaker. Do a bit of executive coaching. But I spent nearly 30 years in corporate America, leading really massive organizations, tens of thousands of people at some of the more well-known brands inside of the country. And it's those experiences that kind of propelled me and compelled me to write my book. That's been out a couple of years now. But the surface stuff aside, I'm a passionate man who values interaction. I take pride in the circle of friends and the influence I can have with those folks and the influence they have on me. And someone that just wants to help others be better than they were yesterday, including myself, which is essentially the mission I'm on. And it's the same mission I've been on for most of my career, but a lot more specific focus on those efforts the last handful of years since exiting corporate America back in 2019.
So give me a broader picture of who Kyle is. Tell me, outside of the work stuff and so on, who else are you?
Yeah, that's why I always give that caveat with the surface level answer. But if you want to go a little deeper, I'm happy to, because I love these types of conversations. I'm a husband. I'm a great friend. I am someone that has grown to be. I'm a work in progress is probably the best way to say it. As I mentioned a moment ago, man, I want to be better every single day. I'm someone who is really connected with who I am in terms of my makeup, my being, my passions, my likes, my dislikes. I've become so much more comfortable in my own skin over the last handful of years, which I think is liberating in many ways and something that a lot of folks really struggle to find themselves. I'm a giver. And if I had to describe myself in one word, I would say empathetic, because I came from really humble beginnings in a very rural area, grew up in a place that's known as the strawberry capital of the world, with our very own strawberry festival. And it was from those beginnings that, watching my very hardworking parents and having a really strong work ethic, that was something that I was taught very, very early on, the value of a dollar. If you want something, you got to go bust your ass for it. Nothing's going to be handed to you in this world. So, I think that's the longer version. But at the end of the day, man, I'm just like everybody else. I'm trying to leave this place better than I found it. And for me, that involves lifting up others and helping them, realize that there is a better path, whether it's a personal, business, whatever. But recognizing, if we all are here for such a short period of time, and we're all here at the same time, right? If you fast forward 100 years, it'd be a totally different population. 100 years ago, completely different population. So this is the group of people that we're here with. And I just think it's an obligation for all of us to try to make this existence, the best it can be, not just for myself, but for everybody around me. And that's what I try to do every day.
What do you do for fun?
Fitness. I'm a pretty active guy. I work out 6 or 7 days a week. Even if I'm just walking on a treadmill, catching up on email, I try to sweat every single day. I've found that being connected to, intense workouts, overcoming challenges that are related to that, including injuries, physical and mental growth, has armed me and equipped me for so many aspects of my life. The discipline required to stay fit, especially as I get older, it's impossible for that not to transcend and bleed into the rest of my life. So for me, every single day starts off with a workout, and that positions me for a great day almost every day.
How did you put yourself? Was there a point in time where you didn't have that level of discipline?
Absolutely. Yeah, man. I was hesitant to even drive by a gym until my mid to late 30s. I'm 49 years old. I never was into fitness other than sports. I played a lot of sports growing up. But I didn't make it a point of my identity. Candidly, fitness is part of my identity today. And I don't say that in any other context, just to say that it's something that I find a lot of joy in. There was one man, there was a guy that I hired as a personal trainer. He's the antithesis of what most of our brains conjure up when we think personal trainer. He is a guy that focused so much on the cerebral components required to be fit. And that is allowing yourself grace when you stumble, when you miss a few days here and there. If you're not feeling well, like, don't beat yourself up. This is a journey, right? It's not something that we can flip a light switch on or off. So there's a person, Jefferson Pinheiro is a guy that he literally changed my life. Top 5 people in the world that I would credit for who I am today. And it took watching him as an entrepreneur running his business, but also learning from him and how this guy just has some knack for motivating me and others. He's got a huge business without really the classic motivational approaches that most personal trainers take. And that discipline, by the way, I think it came at a time in my life when I needed it so desperately. I was working harder than I'd ever worked at any point in my career. My health was really starting to suffer. As a matter of fact, I was headed towards a divorce at that time, which ultimately did come to fruition. So the discipline, and it was almost an outlet at first. And then once I created this habit and this pattern of being active every single day, like everybody else, you don't want to break that habit. And you don't want to, we're all really good. Most of us are pretty good at keeping commitments to others, but I don't think a lot of us are very good at keeping commitments to ourselves. And when I realized that this is a commitment that I'd made to myself, the goal was to keep it and do my very best to honor that commitment and that contract that I've made with myself.
It is, it is too easy. It's so funny. One of the posts I just did was focusing on, so many people focus on someday versus today. And so that sounds like you figured out that today is the day, not someday.
I mean, what else do we have besides today, Mitchell? What else do we have? I'm a big Eckhart Tolle fan, The Power of Now. I'm not sure if you've read his book or know anything about him, but it's good to have goals, good to look towards the future, but nothing is more important than this very moment. Nothing is more important than you and I having this conversation. It's all I have right now. And I'm more than content with that. So why put off, what's that expression? Why put off tomorrow what you could do today? And I live it every single day. Try to anyway. I'm not perfect at it, so I shouldn't be so braggadocious with that, but it is a goal of mine to be active every single day.
One of my friends on the post, it said something really interesting in her comment. It was Morag Barrett. She goes, not only do we not want to focus on someday, but we shouldn't focus on their cousins, which is when the job is done, when that project is over, and I was like, I found that really fascinating.
Yeah, one of these days, so the way my brain works, when I hear someone mention, Sunday and it's not in a favorable light, I think Sunday scaries, which is probably somewhat connected to the expression to begin with.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a book out, and it's doing particularly well, and it's focused on. Tell me, what's it focused on?
Yeah, the book is called "Begin with We: 10 Principles for Building and Sustaining a Culture of Excellence." And late in my career, probably 20-ish years into my career, after 2 decades of leading with an iron fist, the classic boss, not a leader, someone that was really focused on results at all costs and not necessarily on the people that delivered the results. I had what I now describe as an epiphany. I took a role with an organization that had an opportunity for a cultural transformation. There was a bit of, I think toxicity is too strong of a word, but definitely some dysfunction and some silos that needed to be addressed. And when I took the role, I was aware of the challenge, but I knew if I had approached it the way I'd approached other roles in the past, and that was, look what I'm here to do. Look at my resume, this fancy pedigree, all these cool titles I've had and the people I've led, all really pointless, candidly. I would have fallen flat, and the team would have been no better off for having worked with me and knowing me. And literally the night before I was going to meet with the top 40 or 50 leaders of this organization, like 45 days into my tenure, in my hotel room that evening, I had to create something to walk on stage with and share with these folks as kind of, here's the path ahead. Here's who we are, and here's where we're going, where I'd like to see us go. But I only ended up with 10 sentences that evening. And those 10 sentences each began and still do begin with the word we. And because I'm not super creative, those 10 sentences immediately became known as the 10 we's. And what unfolded in that organization was incredibly profound, not just the business results, because on their own, quite impressive turnaround. We nearly every measurable reached unprecedented heights and success that this 20-year program that I assumed had not seen before. More important was the transformation and the growth that I was able to witness, bosses becoming leaders and people shedding this desire for their own accolades, focusing on themselves in exchange for how do I make others better. And in the process, by the way, as you know, they are rewarded. They do reap success when it comes to, or after you overtly and conspicuously place your emphasis on others. So these 10 principles became the manifesto inside of this organization. And it occurred to me a few years later that this message is needed. And there are organizations around the world that need to shift that focus from me and be really disciplined and again, conspicuous on focusing on the we. So my book came out in September 22, became a Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestseller. We're coming up on the 2-year anniversary, and it is mind-bending to me to be at this point and tell you that month after month, the number of units moved goes up. I started this as a passion project. I told my wife when I just started the book that it was going to be about, if I could sell 1,000 copies, I'd be over the moon. And we have just dramatically eclipsed that. We're right around 15,000 copies sold, and it just tells me there's a hunger for this message. And especially now with all the drama we see in the political landscape, in social media, and everywhere in between, this focus of I, me, and my has really become toxic, especially in the workplace, which is why we is the remedy. And I've seen it, and now I'm dedicating my life to it, speaking about it, working with leadership teams, working with individuals, and helping people recognize what I've been so fortunate to be a part of and see in so many others, and just continuing to pay that forward.
So, Kyle, when did you turn personally from a boss to a leader?
I'd like to, it's embarrassing. The answer is kind of embarrassing because I went through 2 decades as a boss, a very successful one.
Nothing embarrassing. Let me stop for a second. Nothing embarrassing. You were following the game plan that you were taught. This is how we were.
So true, Mitchell.
Command and control was there's nothing embarrassing about it. It's at this stage, you're just being a little bit vulnerable, but you were following the guidelines that you were taught. I call it, you were following some dubious activities. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means that's what people told you needed to do.
I didn't know. You're absolutely right. I mirrored and mimicked the behavior to which I was exposed the first, obviously, again, 2 decades. And it's embarrassing because maybe embarrassing is the wrong word. It's unfortunate. And here's why. There's an equation that I can give you that will really express to me how disappointing it is. It's unfortunate that the first 20 years of my career have left me with less than a handful of people that I consider tight with, that I have some relationship with, that we have regular interactions, whether it's every few weeks, every other month, or whatever. Less than a handful. The last 7 years of my career, that number is probably triple. And that is, there are members of my teams from years ago that I still have regularly scheduled one-on-ones with. Every 4 to 6 weeks, we just check in. So I lost out on a lot of connections, man. I missed out on truly impacting those that I had an opportunity to impact. But, to answer the question, the transition, it probably didn't happen until I started to see the 10 W's become real in the minds and eyes of others. I created them in a hotel room in Lawrence, Kansas, with no muse on my shoulder. These are not principles that I lived by, nor did I lead by. They came to me one evening, and it was really my attempt to show the team and enable them to be their very best, with the caveat that these are the principles by which I will hold you accountable. But I also expect, and this is probably the first time in my entire career I was this direct on this topic, I expect you to hold me accountable. And this is not doublespeak. I mean it. When I behave in a way that's contrary to any one of these principles, I want you to grab me by the ear and say, dude, you're being a hypocrite. And I was that direct. So the transition became really kind of palpable for me. Maybe 6 to 9 months after that meeting in Lawrence, Kansas, when I introduced the principles, and I could see others transforming, and it was witnessing their change that it was an affirmation for me that I was onto something, that there's a better way. You don't have to be miserable in your job, which I was for many years. My level of apathy increased right along with my compensation. They were absolutely parallel. But to see others find or reconnect with their passion, with their desire to make an impact, to have genuine fulfillment in their roles, not just a paycheck, it was impossible for me not to have a similar shift. And I am so grateful for that team, because if it weren't for them and the way they receive these principles, you and I wouldn't be talking today. Because I never would have gone the path that I've gone, and certainly the book wouldn't have been.
We might have been talking, but maybe not on the air.
Perhaps, if I was so fortunate, right? I mean that.
I don't know about that.
No, I mean that.
I think I'm the fortunate one. But there's something that you said that I want to highlight, and that was your level of apathy and disdain. I put in the word disdain for your job increased as you grew in the ranks. Is that very common today?
I don't know, because I didn't realize it at the time. I didn't realize it until it became so palpable that my marriage was about to end, that my health, and when I looked in the mirror, I didn't like what I saw, because I'd allowed my job to be so important in what I was doing. And it was my existence. It was my identity. And that's not wrong. For me, it was a wake-up call. And I'm waffling on whether it's common or not, because I don't think people realize it's happening to them until it's too late. And that's when the midlife crisis hits, or that's when their level of apathy becomes so strong they make a move. And by the way, I'm a firm believer that there's very little bad news in the world. There are things that rub us the wrong way, things that are disappointing, but I've tried to channel most of these experiences into growth. But man, you want to talk about a real mind F? I don't know a better way to say it.
That kind of worked.
Okay, perfect. Is starting to loathe and be apathetic towards the very environments that you create. So I looked around and I was unhappy with the culture I was a part of. I was unhappy with most of the people I worked with. The people that I thought had respect for me, they actually feared me. And man, what a sobering observation to realize that you are your own worst enemy. If you don't like this environment, you got nobody to blame but yourself, because you're the highest on the totem pole. You created this, which again, ultimately I think led to really really important change for me, not just in my business life, but in my personal life as well.
That was that someday now is today.
That's right.
I'm going to say, and this is interesting to me because as I'm thinking about people who understand their purpose, you clearly do, but you're in the 10%. 90% of humans are born, live, and die without ever understanding their purpose. So subsequently, you have to imply that or assume that if they're running their businesses in a way that is the dubious method of command and control and being feared, that they're not really creating a life for themselves. Money is not the only answer.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about? What is when you think about the culture that one creates in a company you get excited about? What are the 1, 2, or 3 things that a spouse will tell their partner when they come home from the day at the work?
First of all, Mitchell, I need to react to the way you frame that question. So many people do not realize, so many bosses or people in a position of authority do not realize that their name comes up at the dinner table almost every night. Someone else's dinner table, not their own. And the question and when you realize that, I should say, that's the first step in kind of acknowledging and admitting that you play a role in someone else's growth and development. And what they say about you at their dinner table to their spouse, it's entirely up to you. But you don't play a role in that unless you recognize and choose to lead differently. So I love the way you frame the question. I just had to pile on there because it's something I actually talk about a lot, especially on stage. So you realize people are talking about you at their dinner table, and you have a chance to change that narrative if you choose to do so. And when you say, 1, 2, or 3 things, for me, it is unequivocally, hands down, nothing compares, is shifting that paradigm away from me and onto the team. It is so, from where I sit now, it is so easy to see, but when you're in it and you're leading a team, and maybe even an organization, or maybe even an entire company, it's hard to recognize that taking the eye off of your own growth, your own development, and your own accolades, and placing it on everyone around you, and genuinely investing care, time, and energy into their growth, it's impossible for you not to grow, develop, find fulfillment, be more connected to your team than ever. It's impossible. We get so focused on our own growth and our own success criteria, whatever that criteria is, it becomes a maniacal focus that it's impossible to stay focused on everybody else, or anybody else for that matter. So that trade-off is hard for people to understand until you do it. Not lip service, but really do it. Like, there's no one more important on this team than you guys. I'm the least important person here. I'm not saying that in an all shucks kind of, woe is me. I'm not saying that in any other way other than a genuine approach. When you do that, it's impossible not to be successful on your own. So that for me, it's one and only. You say top 2 or 3, that's it. Now, it's hard. It's very hard. The principles that I've documented that are the foundation for the book, they are incredibly simple. They are overwhelmingly simple. But simple is not easy. And in many things in life, just like fitness we talked about a moment ago, I committed to being an active guy. But that commitment has to be tested every single day. When I choose to be a we-focused, we-oriented leader, that's not a one-time decision. And it's not even a daily decision. It's an interaction by interaction decision. I'm not perfect at it. There are many days it's hard for me to find the right answer when I'm looking for me versus we. Nobody's perfect at it. But if I can have more days where my focus is on the group around me rather than myself, our business results will be better. The connections that I form with the team, much stronger. And oh, by the way, my own success is almost preordained. How's that grab you?
Interesting. I love that thought process, and where my head was going is is you made a really powerful statement. My own success is preordained.
Mhm.
Now it comes down to what is the definition of success?
That's right. I usually do air quotes when I say success. That's right. Good observation, man.
Yeah.
It's different for everybody. You're not, my idea of success growing up was lead big teams, have a loud and prominent voice inside of an organization. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. That was just, and today, even though I run my own company, I don't consider myself an entrepreneur. I consider a guy that has a product and service that is helping others. But I knew,
dude, sorry, entrepreneur. Okay.
I don't. So my parents were lifelong corporate America folks, bootstrapped, both in sales. Like if they didn't sell, we didn't eat. So for me, it's always been kind of a corporate path, and success was really about scope, sphere of influence, and I wanted to make a lot of money. I was never shy about that, and I'm still not. It's less of a focus and emphasis for me now because I'm a very lucky person. I put myself in a lot of good positions to be lucky. So, it wasn't all just happenstance, but now for me, success is spreading this message and selling as many books as possible. And that is not for the obvious reasons of financial gain, because you more than anyone know, you got to sell a lot of books to get rich as an author. Like it's not
about book sales. Your revenue comes from elsewhere.
That's right. That's right. So my idea of success has changed as I've grown.
Well, let me, for those people who are interested, they're still hanging out and they want to reach out to you. What would be the best way for them to go about doing that?
So I'm on essentially every social platform with the same handle. It's at Kyle McDowell Inc. And my website's the same, kylemcdowellinc.com. The book is obviously available wherever books are sold. Amazon seems to be the easiest for most folks, but those are the platforms I can be found.
Awesome. Thank you. And so given this conversation, which both you and I didn't know where it was going to go before we started, is there a question I should have asked you that I didn't?
Yeah, there is actually. And I have been asked this question by a dear friend of mine, and I'll never forget it, but it is a question that you wouldn't be wrong in asking. That's, Kyle, why would anybody want to buy a book from you? What gives you the right to tell us how to drive a culture of excellence? Who are you? That's the question I would want to ask, because there are an infinite, seemingly, number of business leadership gurus / authors, people that have, portrayed themselves as having found the hack, the leadership hack, which doesn't exist, by the way. And I would answer that question by saying, I'm a guy that has lived it. And not only am I here to tell you that there's a better way, I've experienced the less than optimal way. I've experienced the most fulfilling, impactful way ever, at least in my experience, and those around me tell me similar things. And that is to begin with we, and that is leading with a we orientation. And it's not theoretical, man. This is not an academic exercise. I have absolute real world examples of from executives telling me the principals have changed how they raise their children, to what the principals have done to improve their leadership journey and have a massive impact on the teams that they lead. It's real world. It works.
I always find that we've done this interesting job of separating work from play, from family, from friends. And it's, if you're living in a world that you're your best self, you're the same person in all places.
Amen.
Yeah.
And that's a process in itself, by the way. So when I found these principles and began to live them in my work life every single day, I did not immediately live them in my personal life. And there was a moment, a very profound moment. I remember like it was yesterday, where I realized I was being a hypocrite because I was evangelizing, espousing these principles to anyone that would listen between 9 and 5 or 8 and 5 or whatever the schedule was. but I wasn't that person outside of work. And it was that realization that rounded out my passion for principle-based living, not just leadership, and also helps me, it arms me to be a case study for the fulfillment we can and should have, not just in the work life, in our work lives, but in our personal lives as well.
I love that. Yeah, you sort of mentioned that throughout the event in terms of when you transitioned from boss to leader yourself, and that is leading your own life and everything else. And so, hey, listen, if you're still here, this is time to spread Kyle's cred dust. Go out, buy a copy of his book, Begin With We. Go out and take the quote or the aha message you got from this session and share it on the social media platform that is relevant for you. Kyle, thank you so much for joining me today. It was amazing. I loved it.
Mitchell, the pleasure is mine. You've got a wonderful platform, and I'm honored to be a part of it. Thank you, my friend.
Oh, thank you. All right, guys, take care. Spread Kyle's cred dust, and we'll see you at the next episode of Leaders